All right, thank you everyone for coming out to our SWOCC and Beyond event, our speaker series tonight. We are fortunate to have Detective Ray Merrington here to talk about cybercrime. We would remind you that next week will be...
Potluck.
Boy, we're the end of the month, so no, that's not the... Anyway.
Avery Horton, preparedness.
Yeah, Avery Horton will be here to talk about personal preparedness. He has a checklist and some really good things to share about being prepared for that awful event that might happen. And at that, I want to thank you for being here and turn it over to the detective to show what he's prepared for us. Thank you.
Okay, so I'll try to, pretty much the slides that I'm going to go off of are going to be similar to this. There's a couple that have some pictures, and at a certain moment I'll actually jump off this and go to a small video, which will probably describe a lot better in detail than I can try to do with a PowerPoint. But my name is Ray Merrington. I currently work as a detective for the city of Brookings. A little bit of background before I did that. I was born and raised here in Brookings. I graduated in 2004. I joined the military. I went to the Air Force after I got out, or excuse me, after I graduated high school. Ended up going pretty much like all over the world, experiencing a lot of cool stuff, meeting great people, and learning things along the way as I went. And cybersecurity, I started out video gaming, and video games turned into, hey, how can we start our own server? How can we, be in the online world, but also save money, but have people come and join our groups and play with us, but set kind of like the parameters around what is able to be done in these games, which is kind of nerdy, but awesome at the same time. Anyway, while doing that, I learned a lot about access that I would allow other people into, access that I had to my own networks, and how I could kind of manipulate that to, depending on if I trusted one person enough to be like a moderator, somebody that when I wasn't present, they had the ability to come in and, kind of hold the fort down while I was gone. And sometimes in the military, you're gone for substantial lengths of time. It's nice to know that some people have access, but not all access to take something completely over. So almost like electronic boundaries. With the internet, it's the same thing. Every time that we connect to the internet, once the computer's hooked up to it, we are connected to the internet. Once we see that beautiful little Wi-Fi symbol light up, and we're like, hey, I can go to Google now, and I can start typing in whatever I want, the internet's also connected to us. And that's something that we have to acknowledge. It's not something that we should be overly scared about or anything like that. It's something that's just a fact. The fact is we have access to the world at our fingertips. They also kind of have access to what we have. Kind of cycling back. On one of my trips, I spent a couple tours in the Middle East. I was actually our electronic warfare officer, which is a cool term and can be used in a million different ways. What it boiled down to on this particular tour, one of my many responsibilities was jamming radio frequencies. So that way people couldn't blow us up from really far away at the push of a button off of a radio frequency. It again was establishing some kind of a barrier. We had something that we wanted to accomplish. We knew that people would use certain frequencies to do certain things, and how can we prevent that from happening? So again, using electronic communication, or almost like cybersecurity, we set up a boundary to make it to where nobody could have access to it. And overall, it worked out really well. So I'm going to try to roll that into cybersecurity. I will also touch on something in reference to scams and common things and trends that are happening here locally as well as nationally that we can try to avoid. And maybe if I get it out here and people hear it maybe from me or somebody else on a PowerPoint, maybe instead of making an option to pay somebody money or fall for a scam, they might second guess it. And that's kind of the hope of this. So a little overview of what we're going to go through. Open networks, and that's in reference to like Wi-Fi. You go to Fred Meyer and Starbucks has open Wi-Fi, and you're like, all right, cool, I can check, I want to save data. That would be in reference to open networks. Also, like a college campus, we don't get the best service out here. Maybe they have Wi-Fi broadcast through the whole building. What your benefit and all your vulnerabilities are involving that. Remote access is going to be in reference to if you have a cell phone and you lose it at Azalea Park, and your cell phone is now gone, and you're trying to do the, where's my iPhone or similar app on an Android, you can also protect yourself from a distance. You can actually log in on computers and start putting things in place on that phone to prevent somebody who picks it up. On the flip side of that, as a police officer, if I have a phone that's evidence, there are certain steps I take to try to prevent this, so it's a give and take. Just as much as I have access to the world has access to me as well. Viruses and phishing scams, these are going to be things such as the malware, spyware, ransomware, and I'll cover those and individually kind of how they work and how they're installed. Some things that you can look for with those. Security updates and low cost or free protections for your computer, such as some brands. I've done some price checking and found a couple that are pretty reasonable for what they offer and make your computer and you a little bit more of a hard target. If at any point as I'm going through these, if anybody has any questions, feel free to ask. I'll also leave a little time at the end to try to answer questions as well. But if you have one, you might not be the only person that has that question. And feel free to ask it while it's fresh in your mind. I'll try to address it as best I can. So I've already said it. When you're connected to the internet's connected to you. It's a very real thing. People, when we set up Wi-Fi, who here has Wi-Fi at their house? So it's great. You can hook up your smart TV. You can jump on it with your cell phone and save data. You can also be on your laptop. Everything can connect to it, right? How many in this room have passwords on it? So if you don't have a password, and you may or may not, the problem with that is that means your neighbor can also access it if they're close enough, or somebody parked out on the street by your house. Some of the things that can come from that, people are nefarious in some situations. Maybe they want to use your wireless IP or internet provider or your address, and they're going to try to do something illegal to where it can't be traced back to them, it's going to be traced back to your house. Because if I'm going to do something shady, why would I want to come to my house for it, right? So if you don't password protect it with a decent password that's not password for something that's easily guessed, like maybe your address, your digits, your numerics to your house, if it's not like your niece's name with 3 numbers after it or something, that the average person wouldn't know, you're opening yourself up to somebody getting that password, using your internet, and having your IP used in potential crimes or scams. And so that's something to always be cognizant of. Also with open networks, when you connect to them, they have devices, and it's very common. It's literally, you can Google this and it'll pop up, and you can do this within 5 minutes. They have computers you can set up to where it's like, say it says Starbucks, when you go into Fred Meyer and you hop on Wi-Fi, you're like, oh, free Wi-Fi, it says Starbucks. You connect to the internet, and you start going and browsing Facebook, Instagram, all that stuff. There's an actual chance, I'm not saying anybody does this at Fred Meyer, but there are things that people can run to where it will allow you to connect. Say all they have to do is change something to where it says Fred Meyer in caps, Starbucks, and you're like, oh, this is the Fred Meyer Starbucks. You click on that, it allows you to go through their network and connect to the internet. And every keystroke you make, everything that you do on that internet, like through them, is recorded. So if you put in janedoe@hotmail.com and then I love puppies for my password on a keystroke reader, it's going to say janedoe@hotmail.com, I love puppies. They're going to put it together that, hey, this person just entered a password after an email. Guess what I have access now? Then they're jumping into your charter cable bill, your billing information, your Amazon, your eBay, whatever it is that you get into and purchase things off on subscriptions and stuff. That's how they start fishing for information. Not to be confused with the other fishing, but there are simple things that very basic people can do to trick you into giving you your information, or giving them your information. And the problem with that is we do it unknowingly. That's something that we have to be a little bit more cognizant of what we're doing, because what we do is, if we never gave them most of our information, they would have never guessed it. But we make it easy because we're not typically shady by nature. We think that we're doing things that are going to better our lives. They're convenient. This is going to speed it up. If I order my stuff at Fred Meyer on the app and then I go and meet them outside, everything's based about convenience, and it has to do with communication and networking. With those ease of access and the fact that it is a very big benefit, there's also a risk to it too. This is just going to be a short topic on, or a short crash course on how we can kind of mitigate those risks. Dorms and apartments, same thing. Remote access, I already kind of touched on how you can protect yourself distance-wise if your phone gets lost, and how I can prevent other people when, as a law enforcement officer, I come into a phone that I don't want them to delete stuff on from far away, how I can mitigate that as well. Viruses, email links, and websites. I put fine print on this because a lot of these that you find, there will be something misspelled. It's almost like somebody that doesn't speak English as a first language wrote it. And I don't know about you, but Amazon's a very big company. Microsoft's a really big company. They have people that are very vetted that write these ads, and they go through multiple instances of quality control and checks before they send out mass emails. If it just seems like the verbiage is off and they're talking about like how you might kind of, I can't even think of how to say this because it sounds so wrong when you hear it. When it talks about we have encountered a small problem with billing your, like, and it doesn't flow. The words are wrong, like how in Spanish they'll use like an adjective before the noun and this, that, and the other. Like words get crossed. That's usually a really good indicator that somebody's actually phishing. They're trying to get you to put in your information. It's a completely BS site. If you look at the fine print on what the actual address is, it usually has a bunch of numbers and a bunch of letters. And it'll start out like Amazon, and then it's like 161250b3@gmail.com. You're like, oh, that doesn't seem legitimate. But by clicking that one drop-down menu to see who it's actually sent from, you can actually prevent yourself from logging in with your Amazon information and your password, which you would then have just given them and prevented it. Another thing that I always recommend is people calling businesses. If a business sends you an email, like, hey, your card information is about to expire, and it may or may not be, I don't know, in these situations, call them up and say, hey, I just got this email from you. It says that my card information is about to expire. But don't call the number that they put in the email. Search it. Go to Google, and I'll talk about secure SSL, secure socket layers, which it sounds like a really big, crazy word. I'm going to show you a picture of how you'll know exactly what I'm talking about the moment you click log on, and you'll never forget it. I promise after this, you'll be like, oh, that's what that guy was telling me about. But look it up yourself, find their number, and call them and say, hey, I got this email. Is there something that I need to do, or is this a scam? And they'll be able to tell you almost immediately whether it's a scam or not. So a little extra step and we can prevent a lot. So malware, and I'm going to show the video after this. Pretty much malware has, we've all heard of like the Trojan horse viruses and stuff like that. That came out like back in like Windows 95 when computers first came out. Viruses, rootkits, worms, spyware, crimeware, adware. Another one that is not on here is ransomware. That's another one that's going around. It's where they actually take control of your computer and your files, and they delete them off of your computer, and they hold them. They have all your kids' pictures from 2003 to present, and you really want them back. So they're going to tell you, if you don't give us, hopefully it's on my phone, hopefully they'll tell you if you want your files back and all of this data that we stole from you, you're going to have to pay us. And it's literally, they're holding a ransom, and it's called ransomware. So we'll talk about that here in just a minute as well. So I'm going to play this short video. It's from Khan Academy, Khan Academy. And it's a really good, they can talk to you about computers and how everything lines up and everything like that. But what I can't do is put it into such an awesome picture in 3 minutes and 52 seconds as they explain it. So let me see how I can exit out of this. Is there a specific button that I need to do to leave slideshow?
Escape, probably.
Okay. Okay, there we go. So I was out of slideshow, but it was not out. There we go. So this is from Khan Academy, and it's a really good description of pretty much they use a house as like your connection to the internet. So if you think of the house as like your laptop and your internet connection for this analogy, it'll definitely kind of shed some light on what I'm talking about. Everybody hear that?
Would you be comfortable living in a house that someone else had the key to? What if an underground tunnel led into it from a public park, where its windows could never quite close all the way? Would you trust it with your safety and your privacy? The internet is that house. This is not to say never go into the house, but rather you should know the hazards before you store all of your valuables there, and do what you can to protect them. So why is it insecure, and why can't we just fortify it until it's safe? Well, first of all, the internet was not originally built to be what it is today. It's like someone decided to expand a shoebox into a skyscraper. The internet originally developed when computers were huge and so expensive to own that only universities, big businesses, and a few governments had them. The point, originally, was to let these massive supercomputers talk to each other. And as soon as two computers could send information back and forth, we had a network. The network gradually grew until personal computers emerged in the 1980s. And then it exploded. Soon, people were not just talking to each other, but also exchanging money, playing games, reading news, shopping, and doing everything we associate with the internet today. Other devices started talking to the network too. Phones, and cars, and refrigerators, and elevators, and power plants, and much, much more. But the ease of all those devices talking to each other came at a price: security. One computer could send another instructions to delete everything on it or take it over. We call these viruses and malware. Or one person could steal another's identity by guessing, cracking, or extracting a password. Vulnerabilities such as these will never completely go away because they're built into the internet's very architecture. Criminals use them to steal billions of dollars, governments use them for surveillance, and hacktivists use them to further their political goals. Between 2004 and 2013, over 1 billion records of personal information were stolen or leaked through data breaches of major organizations. As a thought experiment, let's imagine what a perfectly secure internet might look like. Users would not be allowed to download or install anything onto their computers. All internet traffic would be monitored and regulated by bots and humans, massively limiting the number of websites you could visit. In order to log onto a website, you'd have to type in a 100-character password, submit a genetic sample, and whistle a tune. The servers that hold data would be kept in heavily armed fortresses on the moon. And even with all these safeguards in place, some clever hacker would almost certainly still find a way in. The good news is, even with our flawed internet, there are simple things you can do to protect yourself. And there are a lot of people committed to making the internet more secure. In Nova's cybersecurity lab, you'll play as one of these people, protecting a company that's the target of increasingly sophisticated cyber attacks. You must continuously strengthen your defenses to thwart these attackers. You'll do this by completing challenges that will give you basic coding abilities, help you spot scams designed to trick you into giving up your secrets, and teach you how passwords are cracked and strengthened. The house that is the internet may be built on a shaky foundation, but it's been a home to innovation and an unprecedented free exchange of ideas. It's up to us to make it livable in spite of its flaws.
So that's just kind of a basic idea of what we take as far as risks when connecting to the internet, but also the fact that we do have to actually accept that it's a basic pillar of our world right now. So the idea is, even though there are those risks, there are certain steps that we can take, and I'll discuss those in a bit. I'm going to touch on malware as well as some of the spyware. I already talked about ransomware. So typically these types of, they're all pretty much viruses, but they're more or less programs that people run or add. We add them or other people add them to our computer. They have a specific purpose. Malware is literally for destruction. Somebody just wants to ruin your day. It's like that old saying, somebody, they just want to watch the world burn. That's this type of thing. They just want to destroy your computer. And it's unfortunate that we have people like that, but it's a true fact of nature in the world. Spyware is more for surveillance and information gathering. Does anybody here have MySpace back in the day?
Yeah.
So MySpace, it was like a precursor, a predecessor to Facebook. And it was really cool back in the day. You could actually send a survey to your friends. So you'd fill out like a 300 questions survey of like, what's my favorite color? What are some books I like to read? What's my favorite music? Who's your favorite band? Name your top 3 best friends. And you're just like telling all of your buddies like, this is who I am, this is how I am, get to know me, like whatever it is. And then you tag your friends and they copy it, paste it, and then change it to them. And so what it was a really in-depth way to get to know your buddies, kind of what they were going through, what their favorite color was, what city they grew up in, what their interests are, all this stuff. And we're really like getting into it. And it was a lot of fun because you're kind of like opening up to your friends in the online community. And then this really bad thing happened where MySpace went away. And someone took all that data about all of us and all of our preferences and our favorite colors and what city we were born in and where we've lived throughout the course of our lives and who our friends are, and they sold them. So what that meant is, like, it's data, but it's almost like a biological DNA snapshot of my preferences. How many of us have security questions? What is your mother's maiden name? I'm pretty sure I answered that like 7 times on some of those surveys. And now I can never get it back. It's information that I threw out there and you can't retrieve it. It's gone. It's out there forever. And what we didn't realize at the time is it was like a long play scam. It was a lot of information that was worth a lot of money because it shows a trend. It shows what people are interested in. If you can hone in on a trend, you can sell a product. If you know what people are looking for, you can curb things to where you have people's interest and you already know what it is. So what happened was it's since been sold. It's a known fact. And what the scary part of that is it helps people that can get that information nefariously to try to guess things about us that we've already put out in 2006, and I can't get that back. So either I have to be current and change like the stuff that I'm answering and make sure that I'm kind of understanding that there's a risk there, and I need to kind of go left instead of right, because if I go right, it's all the questions and stuff like that I used to answer. And so it's something to think about it. If you're answering certain things on surveys and stuff like that, always be cautious of what they're asking you, because it might not just be for a customer satisfaction survey. It might actually be for something that they might be fishing for information about you that you're not realizing, because we typically aren't bad people by nature. We want to be good people, respectful, all that good stuff, and we get taken advantage of. So always be cautious when you're filling out something that has a weird request or a couple of weird questions where you're like, I don't know how that really applies to this, but and that might be what it is. It might not be Amazon or Costco that you're filling out something for. It might actually be that Costco with like 12 digits at the end of it. Go ahead.
So should we never answer that question, what's your mother's maiden name,
I mean,
correctly?
I'm
Should
just-
we be putting in some random thing
I
like
would
a
always-
password?
I definitely would never use the word password for password. But if they give you an option to type out longhand.
So my mother's maiden name is not password.
As long as that's what they think, and then you never put that as the actual answer. But on stuff like that, if they give you a drop-down menu where you can input a question yourself that's identified like specifically to you, if it's a genuine, and I'll talk about the difference between HTTP and HTTPS as far as secure websites and stuff like that. I was telling you, I'll show you a picture where you'll never forget it. As long as it's on something along those lines, what you're sending and what you're receiving should be encrypted. And it shouldn't be getting caught halfway through send or receiving. And that's something that, if you're registering, if you've sought this out yourself and you're making the account yourself because it's something you're actually trying to do and they didn't reach out to you, I'm guessing you're probably on the correct website. And I'll show you what to look for to where it should give you a pretty warm feeling that you're safe, with obviously the exception that, you know, some things are just out of our control. If it's something that you've sought out yourself and you're making a username because you moved to the area and you're setting up your Charter Digital Cable, and you literally went to Charter Digital Cable and you're setting it up, I would think that was safe. I'd still look for what I'm going to show you, but at the same time, if it's something that you get an email about and you haven't really looked into it, and it's something that, you know, might be shady, definitely look into who's actually sending it. You can hit the drop-down menus in emails and it will show you it. Even if it's on your cell phone, you can pull it up and it'll pull it up like an iPhone contact. And Amazon all the time, I use Amazon, they're actually pretty decent, but a lot of people try to scam and say that they're from Amazon, that all of my information needs to be updated because there was a breach. It's like, they're the breach, they're trying to get stuff from me, and that's called phishing. But it's spelled with a P-H, P-H-I-S-H-I-N-G. But you can think of it just like phishing. They're literally fishing for information. And if we don't give it to them, they don't have it. The spyware also I was talking to you about earlier, if you put in Jane Doe at Hotmail and then password, or, you know, I love my daughter is your password, the spyware is going to possibly mark the keystrokes. It can actually like show them what website you're on when you entered the information. There's a lot of different stuff that it can do. It can also allow, you can allow access into your own computer by merely clicking on like hyperlinks. Those are the ones that turn blue and they're underlined, and you click on them and it takes you to a web page. There's stuff that people can embed in those to where when you click them, they give you, it's you giving them access and authorization to do things. And some of that includes putting stuff on your computer to monitor you, and that's something to always be aware of. So it's all the best case or the best practice is to always make sure whatever you're clicking on is something you've either sought out yourself, or it's something that you know is vetted. It's something that, you know, actually came from, you just got off the phone with a customer service representative and they said, I'm going to send you an email, and you have an email 10 seconds later and because they already have it on file and you didn't have to give it to them. Those are usually pretty good indicators.
So on the emails, where do you go? Drop down, because there's
So-
like 3 dots on the top.
So where the email is going to be at, where it says to me,
Oh,
right there.
okay.
It says to and from.
Okay, thank you.
So what you do is you hit the drop down where it says to, and there's usually like a little, it's almost like an enter sign. It has a down and then an arrow pointing left or right. And that usually drops down and it expands the sender and the recipient. Usually it'll have CC for either carbon copy or courtesy copy. And that's where you can see who's sending you the stuff. And I already talked about ransomware. So third-party applications. How many of us play video games on our phones? No one? Yeah, that's what I'm talking about back there. She's like, I do it. So I've done it. I've played video games on my phone because why not? You have a computer in your hand, right? How many of us do online banking through our phones? So we have banking. How many, we'll just go in general. How many of us have applications on our phone that we've registered our email with or our financials with? Every one of us most likely, right? So, and that's fine. Our banking establishments are usually pretty good about, having reputable. It's the, when you download something from the Apple Store or Google Play, usually it'll have like somewhere around like 10 to 50,000 reviews and it's got 4.5 stars and you know that it's probably legitimate. Be wary when you're actually downloading stuff and it has like 300 reviews and it's set at like a 2.2. Because I guarantee you Rogue or US Bank or Chase isn't going to have 200 reviews. That's going to be somebody trying to fish for information. So when you're downloading these things, and it's very easy to do, just try to, usually it's going to be when you search in the search bar for like Chase Bank, it'll usually be the top, if not the second one down from, because sometimes we all know that there's an ad, they paid a ton of money to be the top one, but it's usually the one below it's the actual one you're looking for. Just make sure when you're downloading stuff like that, that it's actually something that seems like it has substance and a foundation. Because if it's hastily put together and they haven't had a whole bunch of reviews because they can't make that many accounts that fast to go and try to give themselves a review, that's something that you should be kind of cognizant of. That way you don't get scammed. But when you're using third-party apps, typically they always have that terms and conditions agreement where you're clicking, and how many of us have ever actually read terms and conditions all the way through? They're like 60 pages now, and they have a fine print, and you're just like, yeah, no, it's totally fine. Still, I'll give you my whole 401k. I don't care. I just want to play Candy Crush. And that's the problem. We don't read through it because it's so long and convoluted because you have to go to law school to understand it, because that's what they had to do to write it. And what it does is it makes it to where we get into a habit of just clicking to get to the next thing, to finish the install so we can use whatever it is. And sometimes on third-party apps that are games or something along those lines, you could actually be giving them authorization to your phone or to your accounts. And that's something that we always want to be aware of. So all I'm going to say on apps, they're typically pretty safe. Make sure if you're looking it up for a reason, it's something that you've researched and you've looked into to make sure that it's actually the company that you're trying to download it from and it's reputable. If it's not, I would recommend not installing it. Pretty simple on that. Security issues with personal information getting into the wrong hands. I kind of touched on that. Information is gold. It's worth everything nowadays. I mean, think about like all the scandals that are going on and how many people's photos are getting leaked and stuff like that throughout Hollywood and through, like we have elections that are going on, and I don't do politics, but we know during elections, a lot of stuff comes up and dirt gets thrown out. That comes from data breaches, a lot of it. Whether it's people or data, people can use data to manipulate people. If you have dirt on somebody because of something they did financially or ethically or in a photo somewhere, and you have that, you can hold it over their head. And that's something that it can be prevented if we just either don't do the shady thing in the first part that gets you in trouble, or make sure that your stuff's secure. And that's something that data and information is gold nowadays. It's something that people pay a lot of money for. Your home address and physical locations, I touched on that. Try not to make your passwords your numerics to your house. I understand that you have a guest come from Arizona and you haven't seen them in a while. I'm like, hey, what's your Wi-Fi password? And you're like, oh, it's our home address. It's 36358. And you're like, oh, okay. Well, the problem is somebody that's parked out in front of your house or that can search it, they're going to know what your numerics are, and they're just common things that people try. Password, last names, vehicle makes, like, it doesn't take a lot. You can get a lot of information sitting in somebody's, like, not in the driveway, but in front of somebody's yard. You can see their vehicle make, if it's not in the garage. You can see their numerics to their house. You can see kind of the ins and outs of what they do. And that's all stuff that we typically have in our lives. And sometimes when we make passwords, we want it to be something that we remember. And that can be a problem. So you want to be kind of a hard target. Make it to where your neighbor's easier to break into than you. That way maybe they go to your neighbor's house. That's a joke, but kind of is real. GPS, names, and dates of birth. So Another thing, try not to use your date of birth for a password, because again, if these people have fished enough information out of you and got you to fill out something without you realizing it's not genuine, they might know your date of birth. They might know your middle name and stuff like that. So try not to use simple things like that in passwords. GPS, pretty much phones have GPS tracking. That's only an issue if somebody genuinely is trying to do something while you're not home. I don't try to broadcast when I'm home or when I'm away, because if I go to a trip to like Australia or Europe, I'm not going to put it on my Instagram and be like, see you guys in 2 weeks. Because that's like bad cybersecurity 101. You don't want to do that because people are like, oh, this house is unattended for 2 weeks. Fun fact, if you end up going away for a little bit of time, call the police department if you live in the city, ask for an extra patrol. They'll drive by your house a little extra, because then, you know, at least somebody's driving by looking at it. If you're in the county, call the county. As far as the typical scams that we're going through, who's heard about the ones where people are like, you have a warrant and we're going to take you to jail? So I promise you, if you have a warrant, I'm not going to call you and tell you. Like, I lose the whole element of surprise there. Like, I like surprises. I think everybody likes surprises. So I'm not going to tell people if they have a warrant, because they like to run, and they make it like hard for me. I'm like a fat old man at this point. I don't want to chase people. I just want to be like, hi, turn around, put your hands behind. So if somebody's calling you and they're saying, hey, I'm the sheriff, or I'm a deputy, or I work for the police department, and you have a warrant, tell them to come pick you up, and then call us. Call the Brookings Police Department, call the sheriff's office, because the thing is, what's happening with very basic information, people get taken advantage of, and it's horrible to see. But we live in a society where we can all be honest. When's the last time somebody went to their neighbor's house for a cup of sugar? Oh, wait.
I did. I have good neighbors.
Okay, we got one. We have one. So the thing is, we don't have a lot of face-to-face communication anymore. We deal a lot with online communication, and everybody's really both online. We're who we want to be, right? But the problem is, having communication in person is difficult. It's a almost lost art, and it's sad, but it's true. And that's where we get into this. People are starting to get taken advantage of, because in 1980, if you told someone they had a warrant, you were going to come arrest them, one, you had to call them on a landline. So you would actually know where they were at. Two, they'd probably tell you to come pick them up because they didn't want to deal with their kids or something. Like, I don't care, I want a break, come pick me up. And then they'd find out that it was a ruse. But also, there's a wired connection. You could always trace back whose phone it was. Now we have cell phones. And we have things called proxy servers. People can actually put in, like if I was on this computer right now, and I wanted to look up something, or I wanted to do something that was like less than ethical, but I didn't want them to know I was here at SWOCC. I could log into a proxy server completely free. It'd take me 10 seconds right now. And if anybody ever ran it, it would look like I was in Indonesia right now. I was talking to a gentleman earlier today. He was like, I just had somebody try to access my Google account from another country. I'm like, was it, or was it your neighbor on a proxy server using your internet trying to get into your stuff? Because that's real. That actually happens. I spend a lot of time writing search warrants now. I used to be in a patrol car and a marked uniform, all that. Now I just sit at a desk and type out search warrants about what I'm trying to find and why I'm trying to find it in that certain location that I expect to find. And the truth is, I'm not the smartest guy in the world, I'll admit it right now, but neither are criminals. They try to do the things that work, and they continually do them until they no longer work. So luckily I have other people in this state that are far smarter than me, and they explain to me like, hey Ray, you should look in this area, or you should write it for this, or you should word it this way, that way Facebook gives you this information, or that way Chase Bank will send this to you in a subpoena, and it will tell you this. And there's a lot of different ways that I can work around it, but it wouldn't get to that point if we didn't open ourselves up for some kind of scam. So sometimes people can actually make themselves look like they're no longer, or not currently, in a spot that they are, because who wants to have the cops come to your house? If you're doing something that's less than ethical, try to get away with it, and that's what they do. So, stuff to think about. The Social Security Administration scam. Has anybody ever, like, there's a problem with your Social Security number. They changed it, right? No, they didn't. We have one, it's issued. Actually, fun fact, you're only allowed 9 reprints of your Social Security card over the course of your lifetime. I'm on number 2.
Oh my God, wow.
Anyway, so the thing is, how many of you have actually gone to the Social Security Administration office in Crescent City? It's a big white building. It's like by Washington Boulevard or something like that. How fast was their service?
Quick,
Really?
there's nobody in there.
That's amazing. So there was nobody in there. That was going to be my
Hardly ever.
joke. I was the only one in there, and it took them like 2.5 hours to help me out.
Are you serious?
No, I'm dead serious. It was horrible. That's why I will never lose my Social Security card again.
Wow.
But in reference to the scam, I was laughing because it's like, I'm sad for the people that fall for it. But at the same time, it's like, if you've ever sat in their lobby and waited for them to drag their feet to get you information or to help you, you'd know that they're not proactively calling you on Saturday night. That's not what they're doing. Nobody's paying them overtime to call you. That's a cold call. Like, they're not going to proactively be like, hey, you know, your information got out or bad. Like, you're going to have to go there to find that out yourself. So the sheriff's office, people, they're getting online and they're searching, you know, Curry County Sheriff's Office. And they're like, oh, John Ward. Okay. And they look up the Curry County District Attorney. That's Everett Dial. So they put, you know, Curry County Sheriff, John Ward, District Attorney Everett Dial, and they can use those words. So then they tell me, like, hey, Ray, you got a warrant. I'm like, okay, what's your name? I'm like, well, it's John Ward, and it's by, you know, under the authority of Everett Dial. Okay, John Ward, he's the sheriff. Everett Dial, that's a district attorney. This sounds legit. The problem is, again, we don't tell people when they have warrants. We're going to go pick them up. That's not something we're going to do. But a person that maybe is less than, I guess, comfortable talking face-to-face in 2019 might actually take it for like full value. Like, they might think that it's legit. And then they're going to end up trying to pay somebody to try to not get in trouble. Or the one of like, this is, you know, this is the Mexican police and your grandson, because we all have, you know, social media which lists our siblings and our cousins and our aunts. They're like, this is the Mexican prison down in Tijuana, and if you don't send the bail money, your cousin was down here, he got drunk and disorderly, and we picked him up and he gave us your number. If you don't give us that money, we're not going to release him, and he's going to go to prison. It's like, oh my God. And that's something you always have to be careful of. Western Union is the #1 thing that I've seen people use, because Western Union is cash on the other end. You're literally sending it to them, and they're going to a grocery store and picking it up. So be wary of that. Make sure that if somebody's calling out, I say the Nigerian prince, because has anybody ever actually heard of that funny joke about how this Nigerian prince is a multi-billionaire, everybody needs you to send him 10 grand to reclaim the throne or something? I don't know what they usually use, but it's something bogus. And they're trying to get you to give a little extra, so that way when he gets into his place, he's going to hook you up. He's going to give you a substantial amount for your backing. Another one that's a real one that's actually happened here, a gentleman in California sent a check for, like, we'll say it was like $9,600 to a local person up here and said, hey, here's a check for $9,600. I'm legitimate. I'm moving up. This was actually a refund check for something, and it's a business check. I'm sending you this. Go ahead and cash it, keep $4 grand, and then send me back the remainder, and that's what I'm going to use to come up to Brookings to live. And in the meantime, will you please, you know, do this work on my house with that, you know, $4,000 or extra, you know, whatever it is. So here it is. They're giving you money, right? Why wouldn't they be legitimate? Because what they're doing is they want you to cash that check in hopes that your bank doesn't catch that it's fictitious and it's fraudulent. You're going to send them money, which is not fraudulent, and then the check's going to bounce. Even if you have that $4,000 cash in your hand and that check bounces, you've already sent the $5,600 back to them for the rest of the $96,000. Now you have $4,000 cash, but you're out $5,600, and the bank's upset with you. And they're trying to tell you, no, you authorized it. You signed it. This is not on us. This is on you, because you're the one that authorized it. You know, your name's on the bank account. So always don't ever work with somebody that's trying to get you to send them cash back on top of what they're sending. It's one of those things, the best case scenario is say, nope, you can come up, I deal with cash, you can do electronic transfers and stuff like that, which can be verified, and don't do anything until your bank's told you it is clear. It might take a couple days, and you can explain it to them. If they don't want to play by the rules and make sure that you're secure in your money and your banks and, you know, your life, maybe don't do business with them, because maybe there's a reason that they're trying to push you to hurry to get a deal done, because they're trying to get it before the check bounces.
Yeah.
And that's an actual thing that happens.
I know law firms that have fallen for that.
Yeah, I mean, it's legit. And
Help us collect this debt. Collect it, send it to us, wire transfer, you can keep 30% of it. A week later, the check bounces.
Who you believe someone's going to send you money for no reason? It's got to be legitimate, right? Except for we do have to wait for checks to actually deposit. And my generation's horrible about that, because we've been used to direct deposit like my whole life. Not really, but close to it. But back when people actually used to get paychecks, and you'd have to go down and we'd keep ledgers. I mean, as far as your checking account, as far as in and out withdrawals and deposits. My generation doesn't do that anymore. Do you know how easy it is to manipulate us? It's a different world, and people are taking advantage of it. Yes,
I
ma'am.
think Craigslist is really bad for that, whether it's apartments or if you're trying to sell something on Craigslist, that it's just an invitation for that kind of thing.
It is, and
It's happened.
They're trying to explain to you how they can help you sell it
Yeah.
better for a small amount and everything like that. It would be fortunate if you would receive more replies from actual people interested in your stuff as you would scammers.
Yeah.
But that's the thing, if you think about it that way, and it's legitimate, they spend more time trying to manipulate us and scam us out of money. If they would just put that time toward hard work and like actually pursuing a job or a career, they would be amazingly successful. But they spend all the time being shady. And they're trying, I mean, and that's what sucks. A lot of people just have a lot of time on their hands. The rest of us out working and trying to, make ends meet, we're not always looking for that. And sometimes that's how we get caught. I already talked about the relative mean bail money. Let them sit in jail. Antiviruses. So, I don't know if anybody in here have an Apple or a Mac or anything like that. I have an iPhone, but I don't have a Mac. But I did look it up. Bitdefender was one of the most low cost, but had the same type of protections as far as firewalls and actual antiviruses that I could find. They're at like $35 a year. Microsoft Security Essentials, I use that religiously. I make sure it's up to date. I make sure it's running at all times. It's one of those things. I built computers. I still game. I still have my phone and everything like that. But I know that when I'm connected to the internet, I want to make sure that somebody doesn't have full unvetted access to what I'm working with, because I don't want them to trash it. Granted, most of my stuff's on a gaming computer, so they can wipe it. I just reinstall the game. But I do have a laptop that has a lot of personal information and photos on it. I don't want to lose that stuff, and I don't want somebody else to grab it from me. So there are some things on Microsoft Security Essentials. I enable everything. Always keep your firewall enabled. Has anyone tried to install something on a computer and it pops up and it says, you need to disable firewall to do this? Don't install it. Why would anything need you to disable a firewall? Granted, sometimes it's needed because of the securities you have to give it permission, but if it's telling you specifically to shut down your firewall, just kind of take a step back and think about that for a minute. Why is something I need to install telling me I need to lower all of my securities? That in itself should set off red flags. Now you can always call a company and say, hey, it's telling me to do this, and they're like, yeah, it's because X, Y, and Z. Sometimes a bypass is needed because your firewall will actually prevent things, because you're trying to give them access. Some of the things we install, we do want to have access to our computers. But make sure before you do that, call the company and ask them, hey, is this thing supposed to be telling me to drop my firewall down? Because it is. And if they tell you that's completely normal and this is why, okay, that's legitimate. If they're like, yeah, no, that's not our software that you're installing, it could be one of those spyware, ransomware, maliciousware. Yes.
With the Apple Bitdefender, should we use them on our iPads too?
So I'm not an iPad person, they're more of a tablet.
Right.
They still run off of an iOS operating system. So that's something you could consider. I know I don't run any of it on my Apple iPhone, and I think that the tablets are more like iPhones. But I do know that they're MacBooks and stuff like that.
Okay.
Let me go back. Their MacBooks are the ones, when I was looking it up specifically for MacBook Pros and stuff like that, this was one of the highest rated ones with average ratings.
Okay.
So I don't know if it applies to tablets, but it's something I would definitely look into if you're going to run one. McAfee, and then there's also Norton antivirus is another popular one. Norton was a little bit more expensive, so I didn't put it on here. I'm not endorsed by any of these. I run the free one. That's what I do. It constantly updates. It tells me when there's an update, and that's what I do. And so far, I've had very good success with it. So I told you I was going to show you a picture, and you'll never forget it. That way, at the very end of this conversation, if you take anything that I say, it's the difference between HTTPS, see that S, and HTTP. So a secure socket layer is a big word for making sure, and I'm going to have to actually skip past this one. It's a way of saying that if you're at your house, and we'll say that you live in Harbor, and I live out on Pistol River, there's a big gap between us, right? Imagine the HTTP as being an unsecure mail delivery truck. You put something in a mail courier, the guy's like a drunk, and he like drives around and he stops at every tavern on his way out to Pistol River to my house, and he doesn't lock his door. So every time he has your precious mail that you want to send to me, he stops and kind of leaves the car unattended with the door open. Maybe it's running, I don't know. there's a significant chance that if somebody wanted what was in that vehicle, or the vehicle itself, they could take it on its way, or they could copy it. Like whatever it is that you're sending me, maybe it's paper, maybe they photocopy it, maybe they take a picture on their cell phone now, because you have cameras everywhere. And in between you sending it and me receiving it, it has been either corrupted, duplicated, changed, or stolen completely. That's HTTP. Now, you want like a Brinks vehicle that's completely locked down, has bulletproof glass, and the guy's sober, doesn't do bad things, and he has ethics and everything like that, and maybe, I won't say what he's equipped with, I'm just saying like the exact opposite of the first guy, that's with the S. And what that does is it actually encrypts what you send. So encryption, when you see the HTTPS, it means in theory, in the way that it is, when you send something, it leaves your computer encrypted, and it does not get unencrypted or decrypted until it gets to the recipient. So in transit, it shouldn't be taken advantage of. It shouldn't stop, it shouldn't be altered. It's secure when it's sent, and it's secure when it's received. All right?
So we would see that in the address line?
Yes,
Is that-
on the HTML up top, on the URL line, where you're like www.facebook.com, it pops up when you hit enter, HTTPS, pops right up. If it says HTTPS, you should be good. Also, there's this beautiful little lock. That lock's what you should be looking for. That's what I'm trying, and I'll show you the picture of it. If not, it'll sometimes have like a globe, excuse me, or something along those lines. But if it has a lock on it, you should, anytime you see the lock, it should say HTTPS. And that means that what you're sending should be encrypted and safe until it gets to the recipient, at which point they should be able to read it or access it. So, some best and worst case practices. So VPN is going to be something that's a virtual private network. That has to do when you're setting up your own wireless network. It means it's pretty much encryption for your own wireless, so that way what you're allowing in and what you're sending out is encrypted. It's a security thing. A way to look at it, and it's not so much a VPN, but think about this as far as your home networks. If you're not going to do a VPN, which they're pretty simple to set up, there's some good YouTube videos on it that you can literally go step by step. But at a very minimum, like I said, have password protections on your Wi-Fi. That's one of the easiest things that I would tell you to do, because then you're not allowing people access to your router. Because you think about it, your cell phone's connected to a router, your tablet's connected to a router, my smart TV, because I got to watch my Netflix and Hulu and all that good stuff. Everything in that house is connected to it. So if I let somebody else connect to it, by the same process, they're also connected to my other devices. And if they're a lot smarter than me, which is not hard to be, they have access to those things. And I might not even know that they're accessing them. My phone contacts, my messages, my emails, my debit card information, stuff like that. It's just taking an extra step to make sure that you're safe. Always enable your firewall. If something's asking you to lower down your firewall, really think hard. Why is it asking this? Call the company that you're trying to install a program or software. Ask them if this is normal. If they say it is, consider trusting it, if they give you a good enough answer. File sharing is going to be something you typically have to enable that, so just don't turn on file sharing, that way other people don't have access to your stuff. And then the HTTPS in the web browser, we already touched on that. Turn off automatic connection feature within your Wi-Fi settings. So when you're going to Fred Meyer, if you have your automatically connect to open wireless internets, sometimes it's better to pay for the data than it is to give your information away. And that's what I was talking about, the Fred Meyer, the Starbucks situation. If you have it set up to automatically connect to open networks to try to save on some wireless charges as far as data, in the small amount of data you might be using while walking through Fred Meyer shopping, you might be giving up a lot of your personal information or giving people access to try to take some of your stuff. So it's always a risk and reward. I don't think that's a risk that I take. I don't have mine connect to anything unless I tell it to, and usually what I'm connecting to has passwords. And it's because I've asked for the password and I'm on a private network. Or I just use my data. Don't assume that a Wi-Fi network is trustworthy. So what I was telling you earlier, how they can try to make your wireless, you think that you're connecting a wireless to a router or to a Wi-Fi provider, they could actually be skimming everything that you put through it, all of your information, and they could also use it to backdoor into your products, which if your devices have stuff stored on them, they could have access to it. So try not to connect unless you absolutely have to open networks, unless they're really vetted. Like I would not be uncomfortable connecting to SWOCC. although there could be some young student here that's really good at mimicking the SWOCC Wi-Fi, or that has already taken some. I mean, this is a pretty safe place, but again, you got to think about that. Like small vendors and stuff like that are always going to be a little bit more scary, in my opinion. A lot more can go wrong. Don't share sensitive data. That's another thing to think about it. When you log onto this Wi-Fi network, and then you start logging into your banking app, so now you're using their wireless, and now you're putting in passwords and giving them information, possibly. That's terrifying. I don't want to give anybody access. I mean, it takes forever to get banks to return stuff, and sometimes if you're found to be at fault, you're still out that money. So definitely be cognizant of that. Always keep it updated. Like I said, the Microsoft Security Essentials, which is free, tells me when there's an update, or you can actually set it to automatically update, and that's what I have mine set up. Antivirus software, use it, and ensure it's up to date. If you have it set to always update, it should always update. So we already touched on this, and here's what you're looking for right here. So there's the lock. If you see a globe, it's not secure. See that there's no S here? See the S? So, and the thing is, we don't type HTTPS semicolon / / or colon, not semicolon. We don't type that because it automatically pops up when you type in the URL, but it will add it. And if it has the S, it means it has that secure socket there, and it means that it should be safe for you sending and receiving as far as encryption goes. It means that you are about as safe as you can be on a website. If you see this, there's probably a reason that it's not a legitimate vetted website, or that they're running it without the SSL, or the HTTPS, however you want to refer to it. It's unencrypted or unsecured versus encrypted. And that's the #1 thing you should always look at when you're on websites. These are some of the resources. Just looking up, I don't think anybody's going to want to do that. I didn't want to use their information or some of their wording without giving them some kind of credit, because I'm not a plagiarism type person. I'd like to be allowed in colleges for a little longer. Is there any questions about anything I covered that I can try to talk about in a little bit more detail? Yes?
I have a couple questions, like on Messenger or Facebook.
Okay.
I've had like guys try to friend me, and when I go click on their profile, there's very little there. But I actually,
Like they're bots.
Yeah, and I actually accepted one friend because that guy's kind of good looking and stuff.
Yeah.
Well, all the guys are good looking, but I mistakenly accepted one friend, and then he started talking to me, and he did the stuff you're talking about, like he wasn't speaking fluent. But, and a couple different guys have asked me to go install the Hangouts app so that we can talk better.
Yeah.
And that raised all these flags.
So Hangouts, and they could be trying things like in a sexual nature or something along those lines, or it could be like a financial thing, they're trying to like butter you up for it or something along those lines. Usually Hangouts and like Snapchat, and there's a few other of them that we run into. They're either things where you can talk on video chat, or they're other certain ones, if I won't get into them too much because it's kind of convoluted. Some of them only store data for certain amounts of times. And from my side of things, you can see how that would be a problem.
Right.
Like, let's say you get taken advantage of by somebody financially, and you don't realize it for X amount of days, and maybe that's 10 days too long, and the company has dumped all that data, and I can't go back as an officer and request it to try to file charges on somebody and to show that you are actually a victim, and maybe we can bring somebody to actually face criminal charges for maybe identity theft or fraud. That may be why they're trying to get you to go to these third-party applications as far as setting up, signing on, and then exchanging information. There's a possibility that maybe they want to get you. I couldn't understand thinking, like, if it was a romantic reason, why you couldn't talk on Facebook Messenger with video and photo and text, why they try to bring you to another app, unless there's a different reason that they're trying to get you onto that app, as far as it might be easier for them to keep crimes on it.
Okay, yeah, because I'm really naive and
Do they usually have a guy's name with like 3 pictures, and they're really bland, they don't have anything about them, and there's numbers after their name?
Yeah.
That's what you run into a lot, because people that are criminals, I will never be out of work, because criminals aren't always the smartest people, but they try really hard.
I mean, one guy, I mean, he was just like, I'm like, I don't feel good, I'm gonna go sleep, and I'll think about it later. He's like, no, please do it now, and I'm just like, block. And is blocking enough?
I mean, I don't see,
Keep
as long as you block communication with them, they can't see you, they can't see when you're online, they have no more access to you, and they're not popping up on your stuff. I mean, what you have to understand is he has like 35 more accounts, so you see.
That's what's happening, it's like, and I'm like, I delete everybody, I don't have
Another
any
thing you can
friends.
do on stuff like that, like on social media, is typically they'll, and you can call and ask about it, but typically they'll have things that say, don't allow anyone that's not a friend of a friend to add me or to communicate with me. So if Tyler and me are friends,
Uh-huh.
and you've never met me before, but I'm Tyler's friend, I would be able to message you or send you an invite because I'm already vetted through one of these other people, and that's a good way to kind of keep it close-knit, to where you're only allowing friends of friends, understanding that like that will cut off your, I mean, we're in Brookings, so if you're looking for a guy in Brookings, he's not
Right.
you're limiting your options, but
Yeah.
you're definitely making it towards legitimate,
Yeah.
so that's also another option.
The other thing that just as an example of what, like Tyler was looking for a van to buy, and I don't know if it's through Craigslist or what, to live in, and it just seemed like too good of a deal, but it was only $3,000, and they wanted him to send, I think it was Amazon money or something like that, and we actually went to Fred Meyer's in Coos Bay and asked for the Amazon cards, like gift cards for $3,000, but we had to go to another area. They didn't sell them in that area.
And hopefully they said something to you about
No, but in the meantime, Tyler thought, let me Google, because he just sold his truck and he doesn't have much money, he lives on Social Security. He Googled the phone number, and
Scam,
just
scam,
like you
scam.
said, and they said, no, and it's like, I
And
mean,
that's what you look into. You have to ask yourself, why is this person wanting to be paid with Amazon gift cards? Like, what if I like beer and I can't buy beer on Amazon? Like, I mean, you know, it's a joke, but I mean, we like cash, we like money that's deposited straight into our accounts. So why would somebody want a gift card that's untraceable? Because they're probably doing something that's illegal, and when you get duped, there's no way of going back and trying to catch them. They now have an Amazon gift card. And what it is, it's not trackable or traceable. So,
you just
I mean,
lost your
don't worry about paying taxes on it or anything like that. Not that that's a main concern of anyone in this room, myself included. It's whatever, it happens. But what you're looking at is, why are they trying to get you to give them something that's untraceable? Because they're doing something wrong and they don't want to get caught. Now you just have to figure out, are they doing something wrong because they want to stick it to the man, or are they trying to dupe me into giving them something that they work really hard for? And usually you can figure that answer out yourself with a quick Google of a phone number or an email. Because a lot of people get thrown on scam lists with like the Better Business Bureau, other scam like alerts and stuff like that. If you keep getting a call over and over from somebody from Georgia and you look up that number online, there's a chance that person's cold called about 20,000 other people. They got mad and put them on a watch list online. They have databases, and that's how you can typically find out whether or not something is legitimate. A little extra research. If you ever have a question, call us. Like, it's one of those things, I would rather talk to you for an hour when I'm not working than have you go and give somebody $1,500 cash. Because $1,500 is a lot of money. Like, $10 is something I don't want to give somebody if they haven't earned it. So if it takes me an hour or a 5-minute conversation, or you come in, you're like, hey, Ray, my friend Sally has this going on, or one of our other officers, contact them too. Is this legitimate? Is this something we should look into? Because it kind of seems like it's not real. We'll try to do our best as far as looking it up. Sometimes we don't have all the answers, but we can definitely try to look it up for you or try to help out a little bit. Because to be honest, it's a big part of public safety. Like, we're safeguarding citizens and their property. And, I mean, it's one of the things that we should all do as humans, but we also do it for a living. So if it's something that you ever have a question, don't hesitate to come down and try to, get an idea of whether or not this is legitimate. Like Publishers Clearinghouse, how many of us are going to win that? But they still send out all these scams about how they might have been selected for the Publishers Clearinghouse. I'm not saying the actual company, I'm saying the scam artist. That was going on for a while. But until it became a hot ticket item, nobody really knew. They just thought they were really lucky. Yes?
Can I just sort of tell you what I do? I'm on Mozilla, and they have pretty strong privacy protections.
Okay. You're talking about Firefox?
Yeah, Firefox, right. But they'll also, I don't know if people realize this when you're on Facebook, besides the fact that they're selling all of your information, they're also the leaders in facial recognition. So if you're going up and have anything with picture in it, they're doing facial recognition on you, and that'll go into a database, which I
That
personally
hurt me.
What?
How can that hurt me?
I'm sure can. I wouldn't give it away.
No, I'm just curious.
So let's say, so right now, how many of us have thumbprint scanners on our phones to allow us access into them?
It's a face thing.
So, okay, facial recognition. So you asked, how can it hurt you? What if I wanted her phone?
Okay.
What if what?
What if I wanted in her phone and I have her
Because
facial
mine
recognition
opens by
identifiers?
face.
What if I have somebody's fingerprint that I can put over the top of something? Like, it's one of those things, it's all about access. Once you have access, like I said, data and information is gold. If you have it and you can get in, you can manipulate things.
So you can use
Okay.
somebody else's phone and have a picture of her on
It's
this
very
phone
possible.
and
That's right.
use that to
So,
access
I
her
work
phone
40 hours a
facial
week
recognition.
doing law enforcement, right? Somebody works 80 hours a week trying to do people out of money. They
Well,
work twice as hard.
Facebook is the big one who's developing and doing facial recognition.
Uh-huh.
And their privacy, if you read their privacy statement, it's worthless. It basically says you don't have any privacy.
Uh-huh.
They not only track everything you do on Facebook, they feel that they have the right to track everything you do.
You mean like your microphone when it's on your phone? You ever been talking to
Anything
somebody and then you
else.
found an ad for exactly what you were talking about like 20 minutes earlier?
They're
Or is
tracking
that your
every
phone listens to
time.
you
And so is
while it's in
Google.
your pocket?
If you do Mozilla, you can put a Facebook container and a Google container, which limits them to only tracking, like if you do Google
Like
search.
search bars and stuff?
Right.
Yes.
Otherwise, they're tracking everything you do, and they're working on constantly creating more data they can sell about.
Yeah, because if I go and buy something on Amazon, all of a sudden it's in
Yeah.
ads on my Facebook.
Well, Amazon does the same thing, but they do even more. What they do is what's called airline pricing, which is, for instance, if you're going to buy book on courses, then all those little things that they suggest to you are going to be a higher price than if you back out of your computer, go back in and price it, because that's what the airlines do.
So if you've ever, how many of us have ever gone on vacation and flown somewhere? So have you ever noticed as you look up the same flight over and over and try to offset your days for like, oh, Thursdays are the best days to fly out. They're usually lower. And you notice like the next day you search and it's a little bit more. And then even in that same day, it gets a little bit more and a little bit more. What you should do is go into your internet browser and delete your cookies. Your
Right.
cookies are like your cache, your stored information, your stored data.
It's-
Delete it and watch those prices drop right back down.
Yeah, as soon as they know you want it, the price goes up.
And that's an
And they're tracking you
actual,
on
that's
cookies,
an
but
actual
you
strategy
want
that
all
they
of
do.
it.
So they
And
can
that's what
use
airlines
data
all
against you.
do also. I mean, if you're looking up, this is kind of fun, if you look up a budget price on, say, Alaska, you're just like, well, I don't think that's really good, I think I should look at a couple of airlines. So 10 minutes later, after you've looked at two other airlines, you go back, and suddenly all of those budget seats have been sold.
Yeah.
All 50 of them, or whatever the hell it was.
Right.
That's airline pricing. Amazon at least admits to airline pricing. Most of the other companies don't admit to it.
Wow.
So how often should we delete cookies?
So that's going to be up to you. It's going to slow your computer down anyway, and over time it'll kind of bog things down. One thing to understand when you delete cookies, you're also deleting, a lot of us have passwords saved on like Google Chrome and stuff like that. Depending on what you save and delete, you can manipulate that. Like maybe you get tired of putting in your username because by nature we tend to go the path of least resistance. It happens, I'm guilty of it just like the next person. When you delete cookies, you're deleting like a cache of information that it is saved. So it'll delete those too. It should speed up your web browser a little bit because it's kind of clearing the tanks for them to store more. But the good thing about that, again, it more or less works when you're buying things. Your cookies are also things that, you ever go to a website where it says, our website runs off of like ads and this, that, and the other, and we need you to enable cookies. Have you ever seen that?
Mhm.
So what's going on is your computer's not saving cookies from that website because you're kind of giving them the middle finger and being like, I don't want to store everything that you're trying to throw on my computer, thanks, but I'm just here to look at this. And they're saying, well, if you don't allow us to enable cookies, we don't get paid by the ad company because we're targeting less people. And so you kind of get that run around. I'm not saying that's nefarious in any way, shape, or form, but it is the way of the internet. Because again, data and information is gold. And it's a two-way street. Your information that you're getting in this is great. Hopefully it prevents somebody from getting scammed. But on the same token, the fact that we have to have these kind of like talks in public are because people are successful at scamming.
But you can limit cookies to some extent too. You can say like on Mozilla, no third-party cookies, no, and you can also go in and say manage data, and it'll come up who's tracking you, so that you can see who just put cookies on your computer, and you can delete them. And they don't make it difficult for you to do that.
No. Yeah, I very rarely use my laptop, I just use my iPad or my iPhone.
So, but it's definitely something to look into. My main things, look for the lock for HTTPS, because it's from sending and receiving, you should be safe. The other thing is, if something doesn't seem right, if it just seems weird, and you get that little hair on like the back of your neck, you're like, I don't know. It's there for a reason, that's us. Like we as humans, we have that for a reason, trust it. That's all life lives, also for this. If something doesn't seem right, ask. Because it's that stutter step where like, case in point, at the Department of Public Safety up in Salem, they give you a business card, it's the word yellow, and it's written in blue. And it's weird because you're like, what color is this? Boom. And you're like, and there's this weird stutter step where you want to say yellow, but you want to say blue because it's bright, vibrant blue, but the word's yellow. And that stutter step is where you know something's not right. It's like, yeah. That stutter step is something that should be like, why did I have that? Something's not right. Let me check it out before I make a decision, before I do something that could change my life. Let me actually read into this. Let me get a little bit more information before I make a choice. If you have a hiccup, follow it, like actually trust it. Call somebody and ask.
Can I say two other things?
Go ahead.
30% of passwords are your pet's name, so don't use that if you password.
You have your dog's name on the side of it.
Not this one, but yeah.
So it's just that it's so common that some people can't share. And the other thing is for identity theft, the very best thing you can do actually, not on the computer, but you can just block your credit agency, just freeze them. And everything that you're on, your current credit cards, all go through fine. But it's free. Nobody can open a new account in your name, even if they have your identity, if they check with the credit bureau. In other words, and that really limits huge losses.
So what do? You block?
There's 3 major credit agencies.
Yeah,
all
right.
of them are making money by selling your credit scores, although it's much more limited by law now than what it used to be. You can simply freeze them and say you can't give out credit reports. But if somebody gets your identity, the only way they're going to make like a huge amount of money off you is to open a credit account at some store and then buy a whole bunch of stuff.
Right.
But no store is going to open a credit account if you can't get the credit data from 3 big data providers.
Okay.
So you've automatically eliminated like probably 80% of your risk.
So how do you,
Just
like
all-
if I legitimately need to go buy a car?
They give you a password, all 3 of them.
Oh,
And you
okay.
open it back up.
Oh.
Yeah,
Those
but
are
you block
companies.
anything that you're doing now. They just assume you didn't know that because, that's how they make all their money.
There's a company called LifeLock that's exactly what she's talking about.
But you don't have to pay for all that credit monitoring frequently. Just check your credit card and freeze the accounts. You really decrease your risk significantly.
What was the name of the Firefox? Was it?
Mozilla.
I mean, but you said limit tracking, is that what you called it?
Boxing. She's talking about Facebook, boxing your Facebook.
Yes.
Yeah, well, it's a thing that Mozilla can do for you.
Okay,
If you're on their system,
okay.
they can, it's called a container.
Container.
A Facebook container, Google container, so that they can't track stuff that isn't directly on Google or Facebook.
Okay, thank you.
And you can also check and see who's running cookies on you, and there's a private browsing mode, there's a whole bunch of things for
Wow.
privacy. That they essentially, you have to, check a little box, but it's provided
Okay.
for you.
So,
Can I ask one last question?
yeah, go ahead.
So, is it important to shut down your computer every night and restart it?
That's more personal preference. I won't say one way or the other. Some people have systems that they don't shut down for whatever reason. They say it has more wear and tear on boot up, going through like BIOS and everything like that, the startup to get into their operating system. But it's all personal preference on that.
Okay.
But just make sure, like I said, the antivirus and stuff like that, And whenever you're connected to the internet, make sure that you have decent, or at least some firewalls that are enabled
Yeah.
or actively running as far as your antivirus. So this is Google Chrome. Is everybody kind of familiar with Google Chrome? So right now, if I was to type out something like, so on Google Chrome, the search bar is actually a search bar. So we'll go to Chase Bank. All right, see the lock in the top left?
Wait. Oh, yeah.
There's the lock. All right, so now I click on Chase. See the lock? So it still has that SSL, the secure socket layers. And it has the HTTPS when you open it up. Now, I'm not going to put any sites in here.
Go
that
ahead.
don't have it. No, I'm not going to do it. But what I will say is she talked about cookies and stuff like that, as far as you can click a couple buttons and it will open it up to where it doesn't say cookies. You see these three dots right here? You see where it says new incognito window? So see a difference? Chrome won't save the following information: your browsing history, cookies, and site data information entered in forms. Your activity might still be visible to websites you visit, your employer or school, your internet service provider. So just because you go to this doesn't mean I can't write a search warrant and get information on what you searched. That's not what it's saying. What it's saying is it's not going to collect your data that you're searching through here and store it as cookies or usernames, passwords, stuff like that. Now, understandably, when you search things this way, it's hard to go back and search through your history to find what you're like, oh, I saw this really cute blouse and I was going to buy it. It's like, it's not going to be there. It's because they didn't save it. So that's one offset for it. But at the same time, there's a lot to it that you're not allowing access to your computer just simply by going into what they call incognito.
I always thought that was a really bad thing because it was all black and scary.
But like here, check this out. So we'll go back to Chase. So even though we're incognito, do you see it?
It's not so pro.
So even though it has this little incognito emblem and everything, do you see that it's still secure?
Yeah.
So that
Okay.
doesn't change. It limits what they can pull from you. So, yes, ma'am.
I'm getting tired of it, but there is another thing you can do, which is you can search anonymously through an anonymizer, and there's some really common ones, which is the major search engine that I use, which is amazingly enough called DuckDuckGo.
DuckDuckGo.
And it's
Search in the
not
dark web a
popular.
little bit.
Right. But the anonymized is kind of like the internet itself, it just routes it through a whole bunch of computers and they can't
Like
track
7 of them.
where it's coming from.
That doesn't sound good, dark web.
It's more or less just actually think of it as like deep web. Like the deeper you go, the darker things get. If you're in the ocean, you're up top, it's kind of light, you can still see the sun. The darker, the deeper you go, the more deep. What it does is, we can all acknowledge that our society is based off of consumerism right now. We buy everything. We like that instant gratification. So the top layer of the internet's a lot of sales and stuff that they want us to buy. But information, history, stuff like that, science, some other things that maybe don't pop up in the first 20 pages of Google, they're a lot more accessible in using an anonymizer. Because it will actually search what you're searching for, not what people are paying you to see. Or paying other people to show you, I should say.
There's a number of them, but that's probably the most popular one.
Anyway,
So as far as Firefox, Google Chrome, what do you use?
DuckDuckGo.
Oh, for searching,
Searching.
but for your server?
We still want to have a local server up in Santa Cruz,
Okay.
Cruz Island. So they can get my IP address, but they can't get it through now.
any other questions? If you have that start step moment, and it's that little hiccup, trust it. Ask somebody. Always look for the lock. Always keep antivirus up to date and running. And unless somebody gives you a very bona fide reason, don't shut down your firewall. Yes?
I do have a question. I keep getting, ever since I got a new phone back in March, I keep getting messages that say remote login unsuccessful on my email account that was primary for my old phone.
Okay.
So they must have sold my email account to somebody, and somebody apparently is trying to log into it every day, at least once, maybe more. And it keeps telling me, log in unsuccessful.
And this is like a text message?
Yeah, it's a,
Who's your, without, you don't tell me your carrier, I would go to whoever you have your cell phone through, because if it's a text message, it's coming in as data for like an SMS text message, I'd go to them and ask them, hey, what's the deal with this? Because it could be something that's easily explainable, that maybe they set it up with your old account because whoever Sprint, Verizon, whoever you go through, they might have had your old email and now you use a new one. So it still might be successfully logging you in on the new one, but showing that the old one's trying to access it, and that might be giving you some kind of an alert. It might be something they can fix immediately, or maybe they have a better reason for why if somebody is trying to access it, and maybe they can do something to help maybe prevent that.
Cool, thanks.
Well, thank you for showing up and coming out.
Thank you, very informative.
Thank you.